Maid.
Yeah.
I cannot work in this building because here I am working in all these wonderful surroundings, people coming from everywhere to look at it, and I couldn't have any of my own race. You know, this was very disturbing to me. And this time I said to Louis Redding, I simply cannot work in that place. I can't work in those circumstances. And he said, you stay there, because by 1963 we're going to begin to desegregate all the hospitals in the state of Delaware. And so by 1964, we began to desegregate all hospitals.
Did you have any role in the desegregation of the hospitals here?
Well, yes, the government that gave grants to the institution had threatened to take away their funds if they did not desegregate their buildings, desegregate their patients. And so Lit and I, Lit as he was the state conference president at that time, had gotten a letter from the Hill Burton, I think it was, who asked him to look at all the hospitals up and down the state of Delaware. So Lit and I did that because I knew all the hospitals and I knew the directors and nurses in all of them. So we went up and down the state looking at all the hospitals to see how the patients were housed. And I guess to some people's amazement, all black patients were housed in the basement of, say, Milford Hospital, NAACP Hospital, Kent General Hospital, and of course this one was no different. In the hospitals in the city, they had special wards just for black people. And then in places like Kent General, see, we looked at NAACP, we looked at all of them. But to our amazement, we went into the basement of one of these buildings where all the black patients were. And when the patients had their beds rolled up, their heads would hit the pipes and things because they were down in the basement with the furnaces and all those kinds of things. And I don't care, regardless of your ailment, whether you were in there for maternity reasons or any illnesses or surgery, you were in the basement.
You mean so a woman going in to deliver a baby could have been housed in the basement?
Yes. And even what really drove us insane is that the teachers are professionals. If they went in there for any kind of surgery or anything, they were all housed in the basement.
Mrs. Mitchell, you talked about your husband being state president. That was the state president of the NAACP. He was president from, I believe, what, 1961 to 1991?
Well, it was 30 years.
Was in that time period.
That time, yes. Mm-hmm.
But you were also very active in the NAACP in terms of getting memberships. So at the height of your NAACP activities, you were also working to desegregate the hospitals.
That's right.
All right.
That's right.
So they were happening simultaneously. So you played a major role in desegregating the hospitals here in the state of Delaware then.
Well, you could look at it that way.
Yeah, I would think so if you were...
And then he, of course, had to report back to the government. And then when they threatened to take the funds away, then they began to work diligently on desegregating hospitals all over.
So when did the Springer building become desegregated? Do you remember? About when? Was it shortly thereafter?
It might have been about 65 or something of that sort.
About 65.
Because I hadn't been here very long when they began to allow them to come in here.
All right. So then there was a change in 65. Did desegregation bring major change in this facility, or was it slow?
Desegregation was not exactly slow, because it takes time.
Yeah.
Patients didn't have any problems at all. Everybody kept thinking the patients would have a fit, and it's supposed to be crazy now. But they were wonderful. It was the staff who had a fit. The staff really didn't want to see desegregation come about. But that's the way it goes. You know?
Now, you talked about the staff. Now, when you came here in '63, you were an African American. This was a segregated facility, but you had to supervise white staff. Is that?
I had all white staff, and the physicians there were all white. I remember that one physician would ask me every day, what was I doing here? What was my job here? Oh, every day I would tell him what my job was because he needed to know.
And your title then was?
I was supervisor of this building. And then I was promoted to assistant director of nurses in charge of all the psychiatric services, which included the criminally insane building you talked about, this building, and any building that had psychiatric patients. We were divided into two things. We had the geriatric patients, psychiatric patients, and then we had the criminally insane patients.
So you made history here because you were probably the first African-American supervisor of a
Yes,
facility.
I think so, yeah.
And then you were probably the first African-American supervisor of nurses. Were you the first?
And when you say of nurses, you mean the whole state of Delaware?
No, I'm talking about in this
Oh,
facility.
yes.
Yes.
And first one to be assistant director of nurses
All right.
also.
All right. So now I can understand why the building was named for you. Because you made history at this facility.
I did make some advances.
You were sort of the foot soldier at the head of desegregation of professional staff, because there were probably were there African American doctors? Were there any physicians?
Well, Dr. Pat Devlin, she was a psychiatrist.
All right.
Yes. And I didn't really get to work with her,
all right.
but she was here at the same time. And her husband, Charlie Devlin, because he wasn't a physician, but he also was here.
All right, so you three were some of the major professionals.
That's right. That's right.
Did you have any problems when you became assistant director of nursing?
Not too many problems with assistant director of nurses. Got a big write-up in the newspaper, and it was so great that I was assistant director of nurses. But then when our director left, that's when the problems really began. There was a big hullabaloo because we had three assistant directors of nurses by that time. And one had a baccalaureate degree, the other one had no degree, and then there was me, even her. So somehow or other they all asked me if I would run. And I said, no, I don't want administration, I want to work with the patients. But then in the end, with all my colleagues asking me to try for the director of nurses, I tried. And even the director, as she was leaving, said, you have such a nerve. Why would you think that you could replace me? I said, well, I'll do just like you did. I get the very best people to run all these services that I'm not real familiar with, and that's how I'll do just like you did. If you can do it, I can do it. I was really stunned because we were such friends, I thought. And then, we had to get to the board of the trustees here before I was allowed to come here and be the director of nurses. So it was a lot of hullabaloo about it, but in the end, I received the job, so I was just director.
Now, after you received the job, did you have problems with staff?
Not too much. I really did very well as director of nurses and had no trouble. Well, there was a couple of little things that I just, for instance, some of the doctors didn't want to really recognize me, but aside from that, I did pretty well.
So you did pretty well.
Yes.
Now, how long were you in the role as director of nursing? Do you remember how many years you?
11 years.
11 years
back. Yeah.
So when did you retire?
I retired in 1979. I've been retired 20 years.
There are a lot of smokestacks up on this building.
Years ago, everybody spoke of Delaware State Hospital as 7 stacks. I remember as a child how people used to be afraid to even walk down this street or ride down here, the street out there, because they were afraid of this place. It had crazy people in it. Huh. Yeah. And I think I told you we had 2,100 patients, and all the buildings, a lot of them are going down now, and they use them for different things.
Yeah. So you had quite a number of years here. The majority of your career was spent here.
And really the happiest parts of my career is I really enjoyed working with psychiatric patients, and I enjoyed working with the staff here.
Yeah.
And I liked it when we had new nurses coming. I could orient them.
Yeah.
I always tell people the brightest moments of my life when 2 brand new nurses came here, just graduated, and I was then working on Springer Building.
Yeah.
I had a terrible time. I was supposed to be supervised, and I was the only nurse down there. So I had nobody to supervise. And then these 2 little nurses came, Bonnie Lawton and Miss Poncell, and they really brightened my life. I taught them how to be psychiatric nurses, and we really did very well.
You know, what is interesting as I'm reflecting on what you've said to me today, the building, the Jane E. Mitchell building for the criminally insane, you were nominated for that building by staff, even though during your years there was resistance to your promotions by staff. In the end, it was really the staff that cared so much about you.
Yes, I'm not sure it wasn't the professional staff.
Oh, all right.
I think it was more the staff of the attendants and people who, trained under me.
Yes.
And who still remember me when I come on the grounds. I understood that they're the ones who did all the voting for it. So. Because the professional staff today is not the same professional staff that I knew.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes. This is some career.
Yeah, well,
Thank you so
you're
much
certainly welcome.
for sharing all of this with me. This has been a wonderful day.
Well, thank you.
Now, this is the second house that you lived in when you were here on the grounds. This is where you lived until 1979.
That's
so
correct.
From when to 1979 did you live in this house?
I can't remember exactly which date it was, but I do know it was these houses were for black physicians. Because they had brick houses back there where the white physicians would come here.
Oh,
But if they were ever have any black ones, they were going to be segregated into these two houses, psychiatrists.
All right, so this was a house that was originally
Planned
for. It looks like a nice house.
Oh, it is a nice house. In fact, I think they've done some things to it since we were here. But it is a nice house, and we have a lot of very pleasant and nice memories from here. And a nice porch.
Okay. Now, you had a little porch
Yeah,
back
see
here?
the porch back here?
You had a large backyard.
A large backyard. I used to ride to work on a bicycle, and people used to just tease me because my cape would be flapping in the wind, and I'd ride to work over
Mary Poppins.
Yeah, to work right from here. And of course, Litt was working down in the school building.
Yes.
Yes, that was really quite pleasant. It was a very nice life here for Philip, too.
Yes. Uncle Litt said that Philip had a little swing.
Yes, he did.
Swing there in the front.
Yeah.
This is
Yes,
amazing.
and next door to us were the Oberholzers. And an interesting story about Oberholzer, she came from in Pennsylvania, and they were Mennonites. And she told me that all her life she'd been told not to go and communicate with black people, Negroes, and Catholics, and I was both of those. We got to be such really good friends because she lived right next door. And she watched my children, my son, and I'd watch her children, so we were really close friends.